Hey guys, it's Toddy here with the Divine Ire of Disintegration Totems guide. So in 3.23 patch, they buffed Divine Ire, and I got pretty excited, but honestly there was not that big of a change in the end. But then they showed us transfigured versions of Divine Ire's skill gem, and that's when I got amazed by how cool Divine Ire Totems will be now. Obviously we don't have new gems in-game right now, so I couldn't test the new version of the build in-game, but in path of building it looks awesome. The damage of SSF version of the build with just some rare items is 8.3 millions, which is plenty for doing any type of maps with any league mechanics in them, including Ultimatum. And it's not a squishy build either, we have solid 80k plus effective HP number in PoE, but of course the biggest defense is buffed in this patch, Decoy Totems, that will tank everything for us. Here we have all three different versions of Divine Ire gem, normal Divine Ire and two Transfigured version of that, Holy Lightning and Disintegration. In order to get to Transfigured version, you need to complete the Labyrinth, and you will have a chance to get it in the end. Or you can just trade with other players if you play not solo self-found. So normal version of Divine Ire also gets changed in 3.23. It has a maximum of 10 stages now, used to be 20 stages before. But you could also get multiple stages per cast, so on average you would be able to release faster and more frequently before. So there was a little bit of a nerf to normal Divine Ire, but the damage was buffed. So overall, there was pretty similar. But now we have Divine Ire of Disintegration, and this is so much better. So generally, what are the differences between these three gems? All of them channel to maximum stages and then release in a big hit after that. But the first two gems also deal damage while channeling in the radius around you. And the last gem doesn't deal any damage while channeling, so only damage on release. And also the release pattern is different. Here you release in the burst around you and beam in front of you. And they split this pattern into two here, so Holy Lightning releases only in a burst around you, and Disintegration in the beam in front of you. Let's take a look at damage pattern of this beam. Because right now in patch 3.22 still we have old version of Divine Ire, and it also used to release in a powerful burst in a beam in front of you. So there is no Nova or like burst around you, only beam in front of you, like there will be on the new Divine Ire of Disintegration. Let me try to put enemies on the left here. So I'm gonna stand still here and channel to the right, and you will be able to see that I can kill enemies to the left of me as well, which are behind me. See, the explosion was pretty big. It kills enemies probably like 2 meters away from me. So that's very good. And the length of this beam is really high too. You can off-screen. I'm gonna channel from all the way from here and release now. And this whole pack died. So they were so far away and still were killed. And we can see that on the new Divine Ire of Disintegration, there is also 39% increased beam width modifier. So this will make this beam even wider. It's still gonna be the same length, I assume. So that's very good damage pattern. There is another very good part about the beam. It's this conk effect support. It gives a lot of more area damage at level 20, but has 30% less area effect. But in case of the beam, it has no drawbacks, in fact. So how it works with Divine Ire right now is, as you can see, it lowers the radius of the channeling part, but it doesn't affect the area of the beam at all. So the beam width is exactly the same with conk effect. You can see these yellow trails to see the beam width, like the two trail at the bottom and at the top. And I'm gonna remove Consecrate effect now, and the channel and radius got bigger, but the release beam width is exactly the same. So we can use Conk effect with no drawback. This is really powerful support, it gives a lot of damage. And that's why I really like the beam release, because again, it can off-screen, and it can be supported by Conk effect support, so really good damage. So definitely I wouldn't recommend using Divine Ire of Holy Lightning. It has limited range, so you will have to always place totems near enemies. They would be worse clearing in maps because they cannot attack as far away. And now we need to compare the normal Divine Ire and Divine Ire of Disintegration. Here I made the PoE of normal Divine Ire. As you can see, it has the channeling portion of the damage and release portion of the damage. And channel portion is pretty significant, it's more than 30%, so you have to rely on this damage. You want the enemy to get hit by this in order to get to the good DPS numbers. So this is why we have to scale increased area of effect here. At least these two increase their effect will. So we have to invest points into that. Because otherwise, you will not really be able to consistently hit with the channeling portion of the damage. So the damage would be too low in comparison to Divine Ire of Disintegration. And as we can see, full DPS is 6.3 millions. Let's switch to Divine Ire of Disintegration now. And as you can see, I was able to remove all the air effect nodes and travel to the north for another Lightning Mastery. So the full DPS is pure beam based, there's no channeling part, so our beams are way bigger. The average hit is 2.1 million. So this guarantees to have huge shocks, especially in combination with Lightning Mastery that gives us even more shock. So this is why I traveled here for second Lightning Master to get maximum shock effect. So overall, the damage is way higher, especially from the beam. The beam in previous, on normal Divine Ire, deals 4.3 millions, and here we have 2 times bigger, right? 8.3 millions. And there's no channeling portion of the damage, so our totems are not dependent on enemies being in range. They always can release far away, and if the boss moves out of the range, you don't lose the DPS then. The boss will still get hit by the beam, and we don't lose any damage this way. This is why I think Divine Ire of Disintegration is just the best version out of all three. Again, it releases really powerful beams that can shoot really far away, and they can shoot behind the totem. It has the bigger beam width, so the damage pattern is really nice, and they are not dependent on enemies being closer to the totem. And you don't have to replace the totem closer to the enemy whenever the enemy moves away. For example, if the boss teleports somewhere, you have to like replace all your totems immediately. You will not have to do this, so the damage uptime is going to be better. The only drawback, obviously, is that Divine Ire of Disintegration doesn't deal damage while channeling. So you would think that it could get clunky for mapping because you would have to wait for this release, and the totem might get killed, or something else might happen. But in reality, as we can see in PUB, the delay is only 1.05 seconds. So 1 second delay is not that much. For example, everybody who played Explosive Arrow Ballista, like this is considered one of the best Totem League starters as well, right? So a lot of people played it. Explosive Arrow Ballista also has exactly 1 second of a delay before damage. I personally prefer comparing that to Flame Blast totems, because Flame Blast is a really similar skill if you think about it to Divine Ire of Disintegration. It also has 10 stages, and your totems keep channeling until 10 stages without doing any damage, and then they release in a powerful burst of a big hit, and they probably one-shot a pack. So I can do a quick showcase of how it feels to map with totems that have such delay of 1 second. I have a Flame Blast totem character. Let me switch to the game, and we're gonna do a quick map. And here's my Flame Blast totem character. It's from a few leagues ago. Where's the Flame Blast actually? Yeah, Flame Blast. I'm using faster casting support here. So yeah, let's just open like a white map and do a little bit of a clearing real quick. And while we're having the loading screen, I also imported this character to PUB, to showcase. The channel time is also exactly 1.05 seconds. So totem release only after 1.5 seconds. This might be laggy because latest patch made my performance way worse. That honestly feels really smooth. And the thing is, the new Divine Ire will feel even smoother because the range will not be limited by these circles. Again, the totems will be able to release further away off screen, and they'll be clearing packs that you don't even see probably yet. So that's gonna be so much better. But yeah, mostly I wanted to show that like the delay doesn't really feel bad, right? Like totems start channeling and they release. Enemies can't really do anything in that time. Anything too bad. So yeah, let's kill like 1 or 2 more packs. And we kind of like fully clear the map at this point, right? So yeah. Let's get back to PoE. A quick tree overview. This is also a mana stacking build because it's lightning damage, so it's really beneficial to get a lot of mana and use Arcane Cloak and Sigil of Power to get even more flat lightning damage to our spells, to our Divine Ire. Yeah, so full DPS is 8.3 millions, and the effective hit pool, according to PoE, is 82,000. This is pretty durable character. It's pretty good, but also have a really tanky decoy totems that will be mostly taking all the damage to them. So we're taking here a lot of mana. We'll have total of 283% increased mana. This gives us a pretty fat mana pool. A lot of life too, but not that much actually. Yeah, only 99% increased life because, again, we split our damage in mana and life. We have Might of a Matter with Harford Ascendancy together. It's 50% of damage taken from mana before life. So we want to have like kind of like equal life and mana. Right now the life is a bit bigger than the mana, so ideally you would want to get a little bit more mana and a little bit less life on your gear. Because Divine Ire of Disintegration doesn't deal damage until release, it's quite important to make it so that the release would happen sooner, faster, so we want to get extra cast speed. So we can get some extra cast speeds from here, also some attack speeds and dex. Quite a lot of cast speed here on Mental Rapidity, cast speed on Crackling speed. And also Arcane Surge Effectiveness provides cast speed as well, because Arcane Surge by default gives, I think, 20% increased cast speed at level 20. Let me see. Yes, 20% cast speed, so each Arcane Surge Effectiveness is a little bit of extra cast speed. And of course, we also invest even more into cast speeds on our gear, on rings, amulets, weapon. We also take 2 Lightning Masteries here. One is increased reduction to maximum mana applied to shock effect. So we already hit with a really, really big 2 million hits, and then we have quite a lot of shock effectiveness on top of that. So this is guaranteed capped shock, and even over capped shock, and we had to even go for a second Lightning Mastery here at the top, plus 15% to maximum shock effect. So this is going to be guaranteed 65% shocks permanent on Pinnacle bosses even. We also take one of the skill effect duration wheels, mostly because we have quite a few skills that have duration, and the more duration we have, the smoother it will feel. For example, Arcane Cloak, Arcane Surge, Sigil of Power, Divine Blessing Aura, all of these have skill effect duration. And just having a little bit of... It's only 4-point investment, but it makes it feel so much smoother. The uptime of Arcane Cloak is quite important because it gives a lot of damage and a lot of durability too at the same time. And here we were pretty close to this suppression wheel, reflexes, plus evasion mastery, plus Magebane. This is a lot of suppression. Suppression is a huge defensive layer in this game, so we definitely want to get suppression from tree and from gear to be able to cap 100% spell suppression. This makes it so much smoother, and you feel so much tankier versus most of the enemies and most of the bosses too. Here at the top we have Cluster Jewel setup. There is a version of the tree without Cluster Jewel setup as well, level 95. So it has slightly less full DPS and slightly less effective hit pool. So until you can craft Cluster Jewels, you can use this version. But yeah, so there's only 2 Cluster Jewels here. The Totem Cluster, really important to have Sleepless Centers here. It gives Onslaught, which again, even more cast speed, which is so important for Divine Ire of Disintegration. Movement speed feels nice in maps. And Mana Cluster with Scintillating Idea, again, really good, notable. Increased mana, Latin damage penetration, everything we want. Out of Keystones, we have Elemental Overload here, so this is a non-crit build. We don't spend any points on crits. We fully invest into either survivability or like other types of damage, quality of life, cast speeds, shock effectiveness. So Elemental Overload, yeah, Ancestral Bonds, obviously Totem builds. Here we take some Totem defenses. It's really important to travel through defenses and not through the cast speed, even though you would think cast speed is so important for Divine Ire, but yeah, Totem defenses are even way more important here. We get the rest of the defenses from Anointment for Totems. Defenses, Another 30% resist for totems. Totem life, it's really good. This makes decoy totems so much more tankier. And some armor for our character feels really good too. And yeah, so what do we have in Ascendancy? +1 totem with totem duration placement speed, more damage per totem, a lot of mana and life regen. Life regen for our totems too. So they get even more durable. Third Ascendancy Arcane Blessing, 20% more spell damage with Arcane Surge. And if we scale Arcane Surge effectiveness, for example from Small Node or from Arcane Capacitor here, this more spell damage gets multiplied even further, so it's 40% more spell damage from this node. Really must take that. And Divine Guidance, it has Transfiguration of Minds, which scales our damage really well with all this mana investment. And we don't really need to take Conviction of Power because we can generate power charges from Charged Mind support. And Endurance charges, we have them from our jewelry on rings and amulets. And now let's take a look at gear first. So on weapon, we obviously want Profane Wands. It has 14% cast speed on implicit, and you want the Suffix cast speed too. So this is SSF HC starter version of the build, and all the items here are rare, and maximum tier 2 modifiers of each modifier, of each suffix and prefix. So yeah, you can also get a lot of mana on weapon, and I benchcrafted light damage and chance of shock here. Very nice. This is the most important item of this build. Shaper Influence Shield. It has to be item level 70 plus to be able to get +1 to maximum number of summoned totems on prefix here. So again, it's a Shaper Influence item. It only drops from either Shaper Influence maps or from Shaper Guardians and Shaper himself. So it can be quite complicated to farm that initially on solo self-founds. I usually get it a little bit later in the game once I'm already level 90 plus and I'm in red maps. But in trades you can just buy that pretty easily, I would assume. It shouldn't be expensive at all to just buy the Shaper item, Shaper Shield base. And the rest of the gear is pretty simple. So on helmet, Boriyama, gloves and boots, we want to have life, mana, suppression. So mana skills also damage, and life and mana and suppression are just great multipliers to effective hit pool. So we want eventually to be able to get exactly 100% spell suppression. You can see my suppression is slightly overcapped here in 102%. Over-invested a little bit. On amulet and rings is also quite important. We can craft cast speed. Rings can have up to 16% cast speed, and amulets up to 20% cast speed. All this cast speed scales damage of the Divine Ire Totem even further and reduces the delay before the explosion. So really important. So belts, life mana resistances, jewel and belts. Also you can have cast speed on a jewel. And we have the clusters and another jewel with life and mana some resistances. Now let's take a look at skills. So the main skill obviously Divine Ire Totem here. So this is a Divine Ire of Disintegration. Before you get the Transfigured version of Divine Ire, it's okay to use normal version of Divine Ire. You don't really need to change anything. All the support gems are listed in order of importance here. So Spell Totem, the most important one obviously, then Physical to Lightning. We need to convert the physical damage to lightning fully. By default it's only 50% physical to lightning conversion. Then Conk Effect, the biggest damage multiplier to the beam. Then Lightning Penetration, and support number 6, I'm using Cruelty here. So Cruelty still gives 24% more damage with hits, and it works for Totems too. Totems just don't benefit from the Cruelty buff effect, which scales damage over time, but we don't even deal any damage over time, so it's a pretty decent gem. We can't use Inspiration because we use Inspiration on Divine Blessing Aura, and another alternative here would be to use Faster Casting, but at this point we already have a lot of cast speed from Tree and Gears, so I felt like it's just better to get Cruelty. But you will see later in leveling section, I recommend to initially use Faster Casting before you get all the cast speeds. So mostly while you're mapping, you basically need to place your Divine Ire Totems and that's it. They will kill all the monsters. Sometimes maybe you would want to place a Decoy Totem as well to draw the attention of a rare mob away from you and from your damaging totems, and cast a Conductivity Curse on rares, and maybe a Divine Blessing Wrath Aura. But against tougher enemies, like for example, buffed map bosses or like super juiced up essence monsters, we have few buttons we can click in addition. And this will scale our damage even further, so totems will have much easier time to kill specifically these tougher enemies. So we have Arcane Cloak with Arcane Surge. Again, Arcane Cloak is an amazing skill. You just can put it on the left mouse button if you play on PC, and it will be automatically pressed most of the time for you. Just when you just when you move your character, it will get activated when it's not on cooldown. So when you spend a lot of mana on Arcane Cloak, you will be able to trigger maximum level Arcane Surge. And Sigil of Power, we place that on the ground since we upgrade the stages of this, and each stage provides a lot of lightning damage and damage reduction from enemy. We link it to increase duration to have even better uptime of these skills. Then we have Decoy Totem, Flame Dash, Vitality, pretty obvious everything here. Wave of Conviction Mines, and also apply Exposure with Totem builds. Wave Conviction is probably the most effective because it applies 15% lightning exposure and like 10% from Hydrosphere, let's say. And because we have Ancestral Bond Keystone, it says that our skills don't deal damage when we self-cast them. And Wave Conviction actually needs to deal damage in order to apply exposure. So we need to link it either to Mine or Trap support or a Spell Totem support. Then it will deal damage and will apply exposure. So Mines is the best option because it provides a powerful aura, 2% chance to deal double damage, which scales the damage of your totems even further. And we can have Charge Mines to generate Frenzy and Power Charges. And another tricky part here is Divine Ire with link to Infused Channeling. This is a self-cast option. On Infused Channeling, you can see when you channel for 0.6 seconds, you gain Infusion buff. And this Infusion buff lasts 10 seconds, and it will provide 16% more damage to your totems. Yeah, by default it lasts 6 seconds, but we have some skill effect duration, which also scales the duration of Infusion. So it's going to be 10 seconds. Yeah, so another reason to have this skill effect duration investment on Trey. And yeah, so rather Divine Blessing linked to Inspiration to reduce the mana cost of that even further. And once we get automatic exposure on Gloves implicit, we will be able to stop using Wave of Conviction Mines and switch to Stone Blast Mines. Stone Blast Mines have even more powerful aura that it applies to enemies around the mine. So what you do is you just throw some mines in order to generate Frenzy and Power Charges, and then, first you throw mines and you need to detonate them in order to get the charges. And then you start throwing some mines without detonating them, just to apply the aura to enemies around your mines. So all of these skills explained here in the notes section of PUB. Really recommend checking out notes. Here in playstyle. So, like I said, a lot of people say that pressing a lot of buttons feels really tedious and they don't want to play the build because of that. So most of the time, like 90% of the time, you don't press almost any buttons. For mapping, you just click your Divine Ire totems, sometimes decoys, and then Conductivity and maybe Divine Wrath Ward. So it's 4 buttons max for mapping. And only for bossing against tougher enemies, there is a rotation of skills here, right? So I explain it. So tougher enemies is any enemy that takes longer than, I don't know, let's say 6 seconds to kill, maybe 10-ish seconds, which is like not a lot of enemies will be that tough. Maybe some essences, right? Or some map bosses if you scaled the map modifiers with a lot of boss life. Or just like a rare monster that have a lot of overlapping modifiers that reduce your damage a lot. So I try to explain in which order do we press these different skills here. Also explain how Sigil of Power works, Arcane Cloak. Since we're in the notes here, yeah, let's take a look. The leveling part, we're gonna do this on the next step. Important gear, so explain the Shaper Shield here. About exposure buff, why we use Wave Conviction. So yeah, a lot of people don't like using mines. So I have some comments about not using mines here, but again, I would really recommend to try to use mines, and it will get smooth, trust me. I also didn't like using mines initially, but after I practiced them a little bit, it's just such a good, huge damage buff and just a boost to the build. Extra defensive layers for hardcore, even though I played this version of the build in hardcore too, but some players like to invest even more into defenses, so here I explain how to sacrifice some damage for extra defenses. And frequently asked questions here, so for example about Soul Mantle with Self-Flagellation. I don't really recommend that, because generally Soul Mantle gives 60% more damage and 55% less effective hit pool. And I think this hit to the effective hit pool is not good, because right now the build is like all around pretty good damage and good defenses, and if you go Soul Mantle, you'll have great damage, but poor defenses. So a bit closer to Glass Cannon-ish build, like I explained here. And yeah, so do we really need to use Determination? Everything is explained here, so I recommend to read. Now we'll take a look at leveling. So here, on the main tree screen, you can go to the bottom and choose the level in trees. It starts from level 12, so you can just follow and grab the nodes that I suggest here. You can also use your mouse scroll wheel in order to switch between these trees. So as you can see, we try to get Ancestral Bond as soon as possible, then we get Elemental Overloads, also kind of like as soon as possible. And the interesting part here is that we take Dark Arts. This is a dual wheel cluster. It provides a lot of chaos speed, and like I said, Divine Ire really requires all this chaos speed to be able to release faster. Otherwise, it will take too long time to wait for the damage against enemies, so that will feel clunky. So yeah, initially I recommend to use 2 wands. Ideally you want to have also cast speed on your wands, but not always you can have it. And yeah, so use Dark Arts for a lot of cast speed here. We also prioritize taking cast speed as soon as possible here from Mental Rapidity. And yeah, at this point we switch to Divine Ire. After first Labyrinth, around level 34, we can do that. And also on skills, it explains here, so at which level, which skill, and which support you can get. At level 34, as you can see, we get Divine Ire Totems. Initially, I recommend using faster casting support. If you get a 4-link, if you don't have a 3-link, you take Divine Ire Spell Totem Physical to Lightning. With the following faster casting, eventually you swap out faster casting once we get to like mid-tier maps and we get a 5-link or 6-link. But yeah, initially getting extra cast speed is crucial in my opinion. And back to trees. We go there and there, so we can take practical application here. It just gives some all-res and some stats initially. So it kind of helps while leveling, especially after kill Kitava. It's nice to take some extra like 13 all-res here. I like it. So eventually we remove it, of course. And yeah, so be careful with tree swaps here. Don't spend too many refund points. So I usually, when I do this swap, I take intelligence nodes first, and then I remove these 4 nodes. And yeah, so we travel on leveling trees all the way to the final tree. With no cluster jewel here, and the cluster jewel once you get them. Here's the final version of the tree. So the skills, yeah, we already took a sneak peek at it. We start with Stoneblast Mine, and at level 4 we get Whole Flame Totem plus Flame Wall. Yeah, I recommend using Whole Flame Totem all the way until first lap and kill Izara in first lap with Whole Flame Totem. Whole Flame Totem is tankier than Spell Totem. And it has 20% more life, and it has this Consecrated Grounds, which gives Totem life regeneration. That's really powerful, and with combination with Flame Wall, at early levels it's especially effective. So probably not even like Stoneburst Totem from level 12 could out DPS Holy Flame Totems. I try to show every single skill gem that you can use while leveling here, but some of them are less important, so if you don't have enough sockets, you can just not take the skills that I marked here not important. So Steel Skin, Vitality, Divine Ire Self-Cast, Seal of Power. So yeah, important thresholds here is level 34 and level 58, I guess. So at level 34 we switch to Divine Ire Totems. We can start using Determination as well. Divine Ire Totems are really cheap mana cost, so it will not be a problem to have half mana reserved. After you take second Labyrinth, you get a lot of mana regen. You'll be able to even stop using Mana Flask most likely, and we switch to Mind Over Matter on tree at the same time. And at the same time, we get this Mana Wheel Dynamo with Guard Skill, Quality of Life, and Arcane Cloak is a Guard Skill, so it's a perfect time to start using Arcane Cloak on left click. Sigil of Power is not so important to use it initially. And we take Wrath Divine Blessing a bit later because we need to get a little bit of extra reduced mana from tree first. Reduced mana cost from tree, that is, not reduced mana. So I think that's all about leveling. Yeah, if I forgot to mention something, if I forgot, then it might be mentioned here in notes as well in leveling section. And this time around I also try to make a trade/min-max version of the build. But the way I made it is I try to not sacrifice any effective HP and only scale damage even further. In fact, we have even bigger effective HP in trade version. And the damage goes from 8.3 millions to 19 millions, as you can see here. So let's switch to the min-max PoB and take a look at it. That's the version. As you can see, average hit is over 5 million. So one hit does 5 million damage. That's crazy. 19 million full DPS. We use basically some extra unique items and better rolled rare items. So again, really powerful gloves for lightning spells is Algo Mortis. It says that enemies in your chilling areas take 35% increased lightning damage. So when enemies take increased damage, it's kind of like a more damage multiplier. You want to make sure that you will apply this chilling area by self-casting Creep and Frost skill. Creep and Frost is a cold dot skill, and you can target that enemy at a range, and it creates a small-sized chill grounds that also will chase the enemy. So if the enemy will move away from it, the ground will chase the enemy. You can also not really self-cast. You can try to automate it with Arcanist brands if you want to, or maybe trigger ones. And these gloves also provide a chance to sap enemies in chilling areas. And sap is another type of lightning element that makes it so that enemies deal less damage to you. This is mostly how we can get even bigger effective hit pool here. Next we have a Replica Dragonfang for +3 level of Divine Ire gems. Besides that, the most important stat here is reservation efficiency of skills. Just really nice to have +3 levels on amulets, so pretty obvious choice here. We don't really need Ashes of Stars for this build because the quality of Divine Ire is not that important. It gives beam width, so it doesn't really scale damage necessarily. Then we have Mark of the Shaper. It gives a lot of flatline damage to spells and increased spell damage if you add a Ring as Elder item. So 93% increased damage, that's quite a lot. So make sure that the second ring you're using will have Elder Influence. Even though we don't really need any specific Elder Influence modifiers on the ring, just make sure that it has the influence. And we can use the Watcher's Eye. The two best modifiers are going to be for Wrath Aura. The best one is gain 25% of physical's extra lightning. And the second best is damage penetrates 15 lightning resistance. This is also a lot of damage. And that's it, I think. So again, we changed just gear. We didn't change the tree at all. And we changed a little bit of skills because we need to use Creep and Frost as well to create chill grounds. As you can see, the spell suppression is still kept, so defense is still great. We still have Decoy Totem, big damage from Divine Ire Totems, maximum 65% shocks on Pinnacle bosses. Great DPS, so it's gonna be good for clearing ultimatums, it's gonna be good for clearing sanctums too. Gonna be good for expeditions. I don't know what league mechanic it can not be good for, honestly. I think it's great. In fact, I think it's so great that here's the builds spreadsheet. I think this is the first build I ever put double great on mapping speed and boss in power at the same time. I really have a lot of belief in this Divine Ire of Disintegration. This Transfiguration is really great, I think. So yeah, this is my old builds. Like, none of them had the top tier of mapping speed and boss in power at the same time. But yeah, so I will leave the link to this spreadsheet in video description as well. You always can find the latest versions of PoEs here in the spreadsheet, because sometimes it's hard to change and update the PUB in every single video and every single other source on Discords and so on. And it's gonna be a really powerful build. Most likely this is gonna be my league starter unless I will decide to try to meme around with some fallen zombie totems. We'll see about that. It's gonna be kinda annoying probably to farm this transfigured version of Gem from Labyrinth. I plan to spam the first like normal lab at the league starts until I get the transfiguration that I need. So we'll see how fast I'll be able to get. Hope you enjoyed the build. I wish you good luck at the league starts. Great RNG, a lot of Mirrors of Calandra and Mage Bloods. And we'll see you guys. Take care of your totems. Bye.